and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we are joined by former mobster, motivational speaker, and obviously so much more to him than just that, Michael Franzese. Michael, welcome to the show. You, as I just advertised, former mobster. How does somebody go from being a mobster to a motivational speaker, commentator, and so much more? You've had quite a life, my friend.
Well, Lara, honestly, first, thanks for having me. And, if you would have said to me 25, 30 years ago that I'd be speaking to anybody in any place in the world, I would have said you're crazy. Just looking back the way it happened, it was nothing that I planned. I was actually finishing up a 10-year prison sentence when all of the pro leagues, Major League Baseball, the NBA, they came into the prison and asked me to do a video about gambling, in professional sports. Because I had a big operation on the street. We had a lot of bookmakers working for us and a lot of ball players were gambling with us. So at that point, I had made a decision to turn my life around and walk away from that life. So I participated in that video. And then I got out of prison. They asked me to come to speak to the players. So I've actually been doing that for the last 25 years on both the pro and the college level. And that's really how it all started.
Wow. And I read that you, part of the reason you kind of transitioned away from that old life is because you found your faith while you were in prison. Do you remember some exact moment? Like, did you have an epiphany? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I remember it, very well, very clearly. I had done 5 years in prison. I got out on parole. I was home for 13 months. Very difficult time for me. I had a lot of people upset with me because I walked away from that life. The government was upset with me. They were trying to get me to cooperate. And so I violated my parole and they threw me back in prison. And Lara, they were really upset with me. They said, "You're never going to get out again. We're going to indict you on another case." And they put me in solitary that first night. And, it was the first time in my life that I really felt that I lost control of everything. I was kind of like your father-in-law. I can get anything done. I can handle it. No problem. But that night I felt really lost. And I said, this is it. I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to lose my children. I'll never get out of prison. I had visited my father for 25 years. I said, if I got to spend the rest of my life like this, God take me. And I was laying on the, the little cot there that they give you. And a prison guard walked by my cell and he said, "Franzese, you don't look good. You okay?" And I said, "Get away from me." I chased him. Well, he came back about a minute later and he pushed a Bible through the slot on the door. And I was kind of angry with God at that moment, but I picked up that Bible and I started to read the book of Proverbs. And there were a couple of verses in there that really kind of got me and encouraged me a little bit. And that's when I started my journey. And I spent the next 29 months and 7 days in solitary. They kept me in the hole. And it was during that time that, if
29 months and 7 days. Is that what you just said?
Yes. Yeah. They had
Oh
me
my
in solitary.
God. In solitary confinement.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was difficult. I have to be honest with you. And, I saw a lot of guys not do well in that situation. And I totally understand it. There was a lot of things that happened. But for me, I just delved into my Bible. I had my wife send me in books on all different faiths. I was really in a search for what I felt would be the truth, especially if I was going to spend the rest of my life there. And I just came out totally believing that, Christianity was the one true faith. And I've been practicing it ever since. And I think God has really straightened my life out.
Wow. You know what? It's funny that you said that you kind of saw yourself a lot like probably my father-in-law, who, you could take anything, you could deal with anything, you could fix anything. I think every person, though, Michael, gets to a place in their life and you kind of realize you can't do it all alone. You do have to have the help of somebody else. And, for so many of us, I think whenever we feel like we're in a place and we don't know what to do and we really are at our wits' end, a lot of times we pray. And I can tell you, certainly over the past year, there's been a lot of prayer that I've done. And I do feel like a lot of prayer that the country has done. And now feels like in a very different place. But I think it's so interesting to hear you say that, because I think if you asked Donald Trump himself, he would tell you that after that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, there was no more sure thing in his entire life than that God spared his life and wanted him to continue on this journey to become our next president. And It's, as much as you had to go through, there is something very beautiful about what you were able to find in those really dark, I'm sure, moments, right?
Oh, there's no question. I believe, God used that situation really to save my life, and turn this around. Because, I realized at that point that God had a different purpose and a plan for my life. I think your father-in-law realized that too. I'll never forget that day just watching him get up. And, obviously we were all concerned when he went
Yeah.
down. We didn't know what the extent was. But when he got up, immediately at that moment, I was sitting with my wife and we said, God's got a plan for this man.
Wow.
To get up like that and raise his hand like that, it was so encouraging and inspiring. And right away, because I am close with the Lord, that was my first thought. I said, this man he's got a purpose in his life. And I think that God is going to use him to give this reset in this country that we desperately need. And that's how I felt.
Yeah, it's amazing. And look, having read the Bible, so many stories in the Bible are, you look at the fact that God uses people in very unique ways, and sometimes it's the least likely person who God will choose, kind of to work on his behalf and do what he needs here on earth. So I think it's an
Exactly.
amazing time. And I love that you came out of prison a totally different person than you went in, especially after you violated your parole, had to go back, the solitary confinement, all of that. I always wonder though, when people have led such a different life, your life previously as part of the mob, and then you kind of come to this complete fork in the road and you take a different direction. Do you feel this sense of like relief, like you can just like exhale finally whenever you made that turn and went a different way?
Well, you do, Lara, because, number one, I grew up in that life. My dad was, a very high figure. He was the underboss of the family. So I grew up
Wow.
in it, and my father was a very high profile figure throughout the 1960s. He was kind of like the John Gotti of his day. I'm sure you've heard of John.
Yeah.
Always under investigation, always in and out of prison, always on trial. So I grew up in that, that way. And then I get involved and I had that mentality. And it's not that easy to break. I mean, you don't just all of a sudden snap your fingers and you're a new person. And, I had tendencies at that time to, think like the mobster guy again. I still have that at times, honestly, but, obviously it's far removed from me. But it's a transition. It doesn't happen easily. And, my wife tells me all the time, don't slip back, watch it, because she's a very devout Christian. And, Lara, I can tell you this, if I don't meet my wife, and make the decision to walk away from that life. I really did it because of her. And the
Mm.
reason I say that, the life is a bad lifestyle. And I want to be clear, I'm not calling the guys bad. I was one of them. I just happen to be very blessed. But I don't know any family of any member of that life that hasn't been totally devastated, including
Yeah.
my own.
Yeah.
My father did 40 years in prison. He was released at the age of 100. He was the oldest inmate at the time of his release. And then he passes
Wow.
away. Yeah, he passed away during the pandemic at the age of 103.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean he's kind of legendary in that life. My mom, 33 years without her husband. When she passed away in 2012, her relationship with my dad can only be described as being ugly because she blamed him for everything that went wrong, and rightfully so. I had a sister that died of an overdose of drugs at the age of 27. My brother was a drug addict 25 years. He put us through so much. I just trying to keep him alive on the street was a chore. My younger sister, 40 years old, was never mentally and emotionally stable. She dies at 40. My whole family was destroyed. And
Yeah.
so, I married this young girl. She was 20 years old when I met her, 21 when I married her. And I said, am I going to put her through the same thing? I'm going to marry her. And I was such a target. I mean, I had 7 indictments. I went to trial 5 times. Rudy Giuliani said he was going to put me away for 100 years. So, and by the way, I really like Rudy now. I had him on my podcast. It's amazing, Lara. We were
Wow.
arch enemies at one time. He tried to put me away forever. Now we're friends and I
I
see things
love
so
that.
different. It was amazing. I really like him too. So, but if I don't meet her and make that decision, I'm either dead or in prison for the rest of my life. No doubt about it.
It must feel like 100 years ago that I mean, do you ever take a second and look back and say like, oh my gosh, it's crazy how your life has changed. And I also want to just say quickly, I love that you said, the people, they're not bad people. I do think that I can see how you kind of get caught up in it, especially if it's kind of like your family business, if you grew up in this and you don't really, Michael, know anything else, or it's just like an obvious transition. Oh, you're going to go and you're going to follow in the footsteps of your father or whatever it is. But man, it must feel like so long ago that you led a completely different life.
It does feel that way. And I'm so happy you said that. It's like, oh, why do good people do bad things? It's not like everybody's so evil and bad, but when we get into that life, when I first got into that life, it was, I had a very idealistic view of it. It was a
Hmm.
brotherhood. We would have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Other than marriage, there's nothing more powerful than, guys having one another's backs and being in this brotherhood. And, we had certain policies and rules, and we realized that if we break those rules, we could pay for it, severe consequences. So we all understood what the deal was going in. And it was supposed to be a life built on honor and respect. And of course, like anything else in life, there's corruption in that life, and it's
Hmm.
a little bit more severe because you're on the street and the consequences can be more severe. But I met a lot of good guys in that life, guys that I really cared for and I really liked. And we were all misled, in our thoughts, I would say. But I'm so glad you said that, because not everybody's a bad person.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about, I think about the people who are part of these crazy terrorist organizations, honestly, and the truth is they almost don't even have a different path in life. They don't have another option. They're born into it. It's what they're taught. It's what they know. And I think that they think that they're doing the right thing a lot of times because they don't know any alternative to it. And
Sure.
in a similar way, I can see how it'd be very easy for a lot of these people to get caught up in that. But you've been very open, Michael, about sharing your story, about sharing your past, with the mob and the whole thing. When did you actually realize that you had a story worth sharing? And did you ever hesitate to talk about it? Because I can see a lot of people leaving a life like that and saying, I'm never going to talk about it again. Are you tired of destructive woke content flooding your screens? Well, I was too. That's why I joined the Angel Guild community. I want an entertainment that inspires and uplifts, not drags us down. With Angel Guild, I can vote on upcoming films and support movies that reflect values with which I align. Plus, I get early access to inspiring content. I no longer have Hollywood entertainment pushing its agenda straight into my home. Angel Studios is leading the charge, creating high quality, faith filled films like Sound of Freedom, Cabrini, and Homestead. These movies are powerful, impactful, and must see if you haven't already. Where we spend our dollars shapes the future of entertainment. So let's support content that amplifies light and protects our kids from harmful influences and makes a real difference. Please join me in making a difference today by visiting angel.com/Lara. That's angel.com/LARA to join the Angel Guild today. For years, customers have been asking if My Pillow sells cross necklaces like the one Mike Lindell proudly wears every day. Well, guess what? You're in luck. They are excited to announce that Mike has partnered with a jeweler right here in the USA to create beautiful sterling silver My Crosses. You can save 30% today using promo code Trump at mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square or call 800-624-3945 and be sure to use promo code Trump. You can choose from the women's or men's style and make sure you do it soon because this amazing offer won't last long. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square or call 800-624-3945 and use promo code Trump.
Well, you know what happened? Another incident while I was in solitary. The pastor that married us, my wife wanted to get married in a Christian church, and I grew up Catholic, and I said, "Yeah, no problem, we'll do that." So he was a really nice man, and he would send me money in commissary when I was in solitary, and he would send me books. And I felt bad. I told my wife, "Listen, I don't know him that well. I don't want him to send me money." She used to say, "Hey, keep quiet. He loves the Lord. Eternity loves you. Just buy something in commissary." So when I got out of prison, he says to me, "Michael, you have a great testimony. Would you share it with the church?" And
Oh.
honestly, Laura, I said, "Testimony? I thought you did that from a witness stand. I didn't even know what he was talking about." But I couldn't turn him down. So I said, "Sure." And I'll tell him, so I stood in front of the church and I told them, exactly what the Lord played in my life during the time I was in the hole. And people were fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And from there, other churches would start to call me up. And before you know it, in the past 30 years, I've shared my testimony at about 2,000 different churches and ministries
Wow.
throughout the world. And Laura, Lara, I never realized, when I was in the life, just how intriguing the life is to people outside of the life.
It is.
Yeah, and
We
then I
all want to
started.
know more.
Well, I started to figure out that God gave me this platform to bring people into the church and then hear about, the transition to Jesus Christ. And it's been working now for 30 years. The phone keeps ringing and I'm active, all of this time. And I think that's the purpose that God put in my life.
It's amazing. So then in that vein, let me ask you this. What is it? Tell us something, because people are very fascinated about this life, about the mob, about the mafia. What do you think that TV and movies get wrong when they portray these organizations?
Well, I can, go to go to individual movies. I can tell you the ones that get it right and the ones
Oh,
that
tell
don't.
me that.
Okay, The Sopranos.
Okay.
Um, they don't look like a bunch of really intelligent guys, number one. And I can tell you this, there were some guys in that life that were very, very smart. And if they had chosen the legal path, they would have done very well in that life for sure.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, if a mob boss like Tony Soprano was ever visiting a psychiatrist, he'd be in the trunk of his car by the end of the week, along with the psychiatrist. So you'd never, ever see anything like that. And
You
so
just
that was
can't
kind
talk
of,
about it, right? You
you
can't.
you can't, no,
Yeah.
because then people would think you're saying things you shouldn't be saying to
Yeah.
other people and a psychiatrist. So that was a little bit off, that series, even though it was a brilliant series. But you take, something like Goodfellas or Casino or Donnie Brasco, they were pretty well portrayed. The characters in those films were pretty. They got it pretty well. So they were pretty
Okay.
authentic. But again, they make guys look kind of silly and dumb at times, and they were anything but. You had both ways. It's like anything else in life.
Yeah.
But I can tell you the best, the most accurate mob movie, in my opinion, ever, and that was the 1996 HBO movie. It was called Gotti, and it was with Armand Assante and Anthony Quinn. Brilliantly done. The script was written from the surveillance tapes on the whole Gotti matter, and it
Oh.
was just it was absolutely brilliant,
All
really
right, now
brilliant.
I got to go watch this. This is going to be on my, when I have a little free time. This is
Well,
on my list.
you can watch it for free on YouTube. It's on there, the whole movie. And
Okay. All right, got it. We got to check it out. I mean, listen, Michael, you've had such a life. You obviously, we're talking about your this huge transition you made, motivational speaking, books, all of it that you've done. What's one piece of advice that you would give somebody watching right now that maybe you wish you had gotten, say, 40 years ago, that could have helped the direction of your life?
Lara, I think this applies to everyone. I do a lot with a lot of youth. I speak to a lot of these gangbangers. I go into juvenile halls and prisons. And the two things that I tell them, I said, listen, if you can get these two things right in life, you got a good chance of having some success and staying on the right path. Number one, I tell them, and this is true of myself also, in this world, we are who we hang out with. If you hang with the right crowd, you got a good chance. People that support you, that care about you, that lead you in the right path, that give you the right advice, very important. I tell them when I was in the mob, I was, obviously I hung around with people. We were all criminals, so we were doing criminal things, and you got to get away from that.
Show me
And
your
those
friends and
people,
I'll show you who you are. Isn't that the saying?
exactly, and they
Yeah.
will influence you. You can't always be that one light surrounded by a lot of darkness. It doesn't work. So, who you hang out with, very important. And then I found out this to be so important. Who you are accountable to in life is going to direct the path that you're on. Again, on the street, I was accountable to my oath. I was accountable to my boss. I did the wrong thing. Now I'm accountable to my God first, to my wife, my children, to the people that rely on me and want to see me go straight. From accountability, if you're accountable to the right person or God in life, everything comes from that.
Right.
Discipline comes from that. Respect comes from that. Integrity comes from that. So I tell people, whether you're in business, I mentor a lot of older guys too that are going through certain situations. Everybody always wants to know, how did you transition? How did you turn your life around? How did you, overcome these challenges? And that's it. I surrounded myself with good people that kept me on the right path, and I became accountable to my God and the family that wants me to stay straight. And it works for me in my personal life and my business life also.
Wow. Well, I love that you're speaking to young people. I think it's such an important thing. especially right now. I mean, look, every generation probably feels the same way, which is that I think you always think, oh no, this next generation coming up, I don't know if they can hack it. I don't know. We're in such a unique time. This is, I think my generation of Americans is probably the last one that has any recollection at all of a life before cell phones, for example. I mean, I
Yeah,
remember when I was a kid, they had the big chunky,
right.
big phones, Motorola or whoever made them. But we didn't, you didn't on a daily basis use those. Those were sort of that was a cool thing if like your neighbor, your friend's parents had one of those. So I am probably the last generation, and now my kids who are 5 and 7, Michael, are of this next generation that will never know a day without those sort of things, without the technology, without the internet, without the connectivity we have with social media and all of those things. And there's so much good that can come of it, but there's so much bad as well. And so I think I'm constantly thinking of our next generation of Americans and ensuring that they have great work ethic and that they are able to take over one day and run this country and keep us the greatest country on earth. So thank you for doing that work with the youth. I think it's so important. And I'm sure that have been kids that you've worked with before who must come back and find you. Has this happened to you and say, like, thank you because what you said changed my life? Or do you keep up with any of these kids?
Lara, honestly, I get that almost on a daily basis because
Wow.
I've been doing this so long. And, you don't realize even online, social media has become a great tool. It's also be a terrible tool. But I've reached out to people that have been watching. Well, I haven't reached, they've been watching me and they say, you've turned my life around, just from
Wow.
hearing you and doing some of the things you've been doing. So I've been in touch with a lot of them. And I have to say this, and I really mean it. And I'm not patronizing in any way. I really thank God that your father-in-law is doing some of the things he's doing with his DEI and all of these things that these kids have been, in grammar school, elementary school, the things that you're trying to teach these kids. I mean, I have 7 children, I have 7 grandchildren, and I was horrified at some of the things that I've heard that they're trying to put in these kids' heads in school.
Hmm.
It's bad enough that you said it on their cell phones. There's more negative influences at their fingertips than we ever had as kids growing up.
Right.
We're in such a battle. And to have somebody in the White House that's really setting the table the right way and making people understand the right way to, the right moral compass to have, it's invaluable for this new generation of children.
Amen.
And, because parents don't want some of the stuff that's been taught there. You know what, Lara, I just cannot comprehend this. I can't understand how people would want to do this to young people. I don't get it.
Well, it stopped, or it's going to stop very soon if it didn't already,
Yes.
because you're right. We do have someone in charge of the country right now who cares greatly that the future is bright for America, that we teach our kids to love this country, not hate this country, that we have a society based on merit and not based on how you look or any other factor. We have to continue to remind, I think, our young generation of Americans that it feels good to go out and do a hard day's work, that it feels good to earn something. You don't just want things handed out to you. That's not how this country was founded. That's not who we are as Americans. And we need to strive, I think, once again, for excellence. I think we've kind of come to a place where mediocrity has been the name of the game. And of the past, several decades of America, it's just, whatever it is okay. We don't need to be the best. We need to be the best, Michael. We're the United States of America.
Right.
We're the leader of the free world. And so I'm very hopeful. I'm very positive. But you have so much more, I could talk to you about. I want people to be able to follow you. You have your own show. Tell us about it and where we can find it.
Yeah, I have, I'm on YouTube and Rumble, and it's just at Michael Franzese. I also have a membership platform, michaelfranzese.com/family. We're doing exactly that, trying to bring people together as a community, people that are like-minded, helping one another. We put a lot of resources in there for them. And I want to say this, Lara, any way that, my services could be of help to this administration or to yourself or to anybody, look, I'm going to be 74 years old. And I really believe that, those of us who have been given much, and much is expected in return. And I'm happy to help out in any way I can, whether it be with
Oh,
youth or anything, no matter what it might be. So I
thank
just keep
you.
that in mind. I love what this administration is doing. I'm totally supportive of it. So we're just here to help.
Amazing. Well, thank you. You're doing so much already, and I'm going to come on your show very soon. So everybody, stay tuned for that. We're going to work it out and figure out a good time for both of us. But Michael Franzese, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on today, giving us, some of your stories, some great advice, and I will see you, my friend, soon on your show. But until then, thank you so much for joining us here today. And to everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great cell plan and feel good about doing it.